Hey guys, what's up? I wanted to say thank you to you all for the great support on my last video. Really appreciate all the thumbs up and the comments and everything. One user that made a comment, her name was Shartsy, and I'll put her name into the video here. And she asked me, hey, should I go with the white bezel or the black bezel for my iPad Pro? And I think it's a really great question because I struggled with this myself when I was planning on my purchase for my iPad Pro. You know, this is an expensive device, and so you want to get it right. And I do have some thoughts on whether you should get the white or the black bezel, and some of the pros and cons on going with either one. If you don't have time to watch this video, just look down in the description below, and I'll give the sort of pluses and minuses where you can take a look at there. But otherwise, some of my thoughts, and I'll start with the white bezel, pros and cons. Right off the bat, the white bezel would match the Apple Pencil a little bit better. And I should mention this is going to be sort of from the perspective of an artist. So I think if you get the white bezel, it's going to match a little bit better with your Apple Pencil. It's all white. Not a big deal, but could be something for somebody. It doesn't bother me in any way having the black bezel and the white pencil, but for some it might. One thing is that I think the white bezel, and if you don't know what a bezel is, it's sort of the edge that surrounds your device, whether it be your phone or your iPad or your laptop. Usually they have this sort of edge surrounding the device and the main display from the device. I think the white bezel would look a little bit more like Apple. Apple's traditionally known for this sort of minimalist, usually white. You can see the packaging on the Apple Pencil, and the box the iPad Pro came in. It was very white. The Apple Pencil is white. Apple's just sort of known as using that simplified, very light color in some of their MacBooks in the past. So, might look a little more Apple. I see the black edge, and I think maybe a little bit more Android tablet. I would say personally, I do find the white bezel to be a little more aesthetically pleasing. I think that's just a personal choice, but you do see a little bit more of an edge to certain things. The home button looks a little bit different. I think just as a package, I actually do like the white bezel, and if you're not an artist, I actually think the white bezel would be the way to go. I think that the white bezel also would be less of a magnet for fingerprints. So you know, any device you get, it tends to be a fingerprint magnet, and you're going to be wiping it clean pretty often. But I think you'll see them less on the white edge. That's sort of just a guess, though. But you can see with the black bezels that the fingerprints do show up pretty easily. When you have the white bezel, some types of art. Let me go into Procreate. I think very light art. Even something like this would look better with a lighter bezel. I think the power of the darker black frame takes away a little bit from the image in this case. You know, I think if you had brighter colors and more distinct art, then the black bezel would be just fine. Certainly would be just fine. But when you're sketching or using light watercolors or very light tones, I think the white bezel could be an advantage. On the flip side, I would say that for the white bezel, there is one thing I don't think you could tell from this picture. This is pretty 2D rather than 3D, but when you're holding the iPad with the white bezel, there's sort of this little shadow between the glass and the display. You can see it here, right here. There's sort of this black line, and what that actually is a shadow, because there's a little tiny space that's happening there, and so you do see that shadow. Whereas with the black bezels, you don't get that shadow. It just blends naturally into the black bezel frame, which is kind of nice. So let's talk about the black bezel. Some pros and cons here. One thing I like is that it blends very naturally into applications that use a darker UI. So Procreate, an art application, is one of those. And you can see it has by default, a very dark UI, and it just looks very nice with the black bezel. One thing I would say here is that you can change this in Procreate. So if you go to the tool menu and preferences, and then you go to light interface and you click that button, that will lighten up. So if you do decide to go with the white bezels, no problem, just make that change and it'll match a little bit better in Procreate. I do think that a lot of times when you're in person with somebody and you want to show your art to them, I think it's a little bit nicer to hand your iPad Pro to them. Having this black border kind of directs their eye right into the middle to the art piece. Again, this is pretty minor stuff, but I think that could be an advantage to the black frame acting as as sort of this border, as this frame when you're handing it to somebody. It's going to look a little sharper in my opinion. One bigger advantage, if you watch a lot of movies, the black bezel is going to blend, you know, if you have movie night and you're turning down the lights, I think this is going to blend into the darkness of a dim room a lot better than the white bezel. And again, that is sort of a nitpick. I'm sure the white bezel will be just fine, but you know, might be more immersive. One downside, as mentioned, with the black bezel is going to be those fingerprints. I do notice them already. I tend to wipe them away with some sort of soft cloth. Not a big deal, but I think they're going to show up a little bit more on the black bezel. But either way, you're going to have them, you know, on the main display too. So you're always going to be white or black bezel. You're going to be rubbing them off. One downside is that if you do decide to go with the black bezel, your choice of the backing of the color on the back, you're restricted to space gray, which is this color right here, and it's actually a very nice color. I like it a lot. Might be my favorite, but then you can't get like the rose or the silver. You'll have to go with the space gray. The home button for the black bezel blends directly into it. You almost can't even see it. Here it is right here, and it just goes from black button to black bezel, and that might be your preference. For me, because I do like that white bezel, if you look, there's sort of a chrome edge to the home button, and I think that just gives it a little bit of an elegance. I think it's kind of nice, but that's totally personal preference. You might hate that, you might think it stands out, but I kind of like it. It matches sort of the chrome edge. Just kind of ties the piece together a little bit from a design standpoint for me, but again, totally personal preference. And that's really it. I hate to sit on the fence, but my final verdict is that you can go with either one. Go with whichever one you like better, and that's going to be perfect. If you're going to do more work using, you know, I did see one comment down on the internet, I can't remember where, but this person said that even though it made sense to get the black bezel for art, for some reason they found themselves on some previous iPad doing more art with the white bezel because they found that more appealing. So if that is something that motivates you, if you're more likely to pick the device up because it's got the white bezel, by all means go for that. But either way, I think you can't go wrong either choice. So don't stress it too much like I did. Just go for it, pick your favorite, and there's going to be pluses and minuses either way, but really both are perfect. Alright, that's it guys. I'm going to go have some tea and start an art video right after this. Thanks for watching.